Sisterly bonds. Several years ago, I had the privilege of seeing you at Omega Institute in New York. It was the end of the day and you had time to perform a childhood yoke. It was the end of the day and you had time to perform a childhood regression, for which I happily volunteered. I was hesitant to go up on stage and expose myself, but I knew that I was in good hands, and I trusted you. I was also curious to see what experience would show up. It did not take long before I had a memory in my mind. I was about 4 years old, and I was holding my 2-year-old sister's hand, helping her down the stairs on Easter morning. We were so excited. I remember the feeling of the carpet under my feet, of my pajamas. We made our way downstairs and found lots of Easter baskets waiting for us along with a baby chick. I was a little nervous about the chick being eaten by one of our dogs, but truly it was quite a happy memory. As I was coming out of the hypnosis, I became emotional and started to cry. The audience asked why I was upset over such a pleasant memory. You see, at the time, that same sister and I were feuding and not speaking to each other. And all I could remember was that genuine, innocent love that I felt for her. I missed our close bond, which we had shared throughout most of our lives. The most important thing I took away from the whole process was that only love is real. So, after the weekend seminar was over, I contacted my sister and told her about the experience. We cried on the phone and started laughing, asking each other, whatever happened to that little baby chick? The session with you brought my younger sister and me back together again. Today, we still share that close bond. We both came to another seminar together and did some group regression work, and we realized that we have shared many lifetimes, in many different relationships. I will always cherish that regression that I did in front of the audience that day. It forever changed my life. Carla White. Such a powerful message is conveyed in Carla's brief account of her childhood memory. Love never ends, it never stops. Its energy is absolute, eternal. An innocent memory of the little sisters at ages 4 and 2 reminded Carla of the immediacy and importance of the bonds of love. The temporary feud seemed insignificant in comparison. A phone call was made, and the relationship was quickly repaired. Anger and hurt were forgiven. Carla's lesson applies to us all. How many passing fights, arguments, and misunderstandings are we allowing to rob us of the joy of loving interactions with the significant people in our lives? Our egos and our pride get in the way. Do we have the courage to pick up the phone and heal our relationships, as Carla did? Love transcends everything else. The British pub. My husband and I were at the Being Fearless conference in New York City. After the second regression, we awoke and asked each other what we had seen. I mentioned that I was in a pub. He responded, a British pub in the 1800s. Yes. In a nutshell, he was outside a British pub in the 1800s but could not go in, he could only look through the windows. He described the inside furnishings, but there were no people. The pub was exactly like the one I was in during my regression, but in mine I was a barmaid, possibly also a prostitute, and he had strangled me to death. We are now divorcing, although not because of this regression. I was reading one of Dr. Weiss's books at a ball game this summer, and a friend asked about it. I told him of the regression and of being murdered in the pub. He gasped and reminded me that my ex-husband and I owned a Victorian house from 1887 in Connecticut, and that the only room my husband had wanted to redesign was the bar room. For some strange reason, I had never put the two things together, but my friend was exactly right. My husband had redone the entire room in the theme of a British pub, complete with a mahogany bar and a British bulldog dart room. Bonnie's simultaneous recall of the same past life scenes is a validation of the memory. So is the subconscious recreation of the actual setting. But there was no violence this time around. Much progress has been made. Soul relationships are not always harmonious and peaceful. Even soulmates can prove toxic if one soul is not as developed or evolved as the other. Bonnie's account of her past life demonstrates this concept, and the following story provides an additional example. Trust and deception. I trained with Dr. Weiss for a week in New York in 2009, and now I work in I trained with Dr. Weiss for a week in New York in 2009, and now I work in Australia using past life regression. I love this method, and my dream is to make it available to mainstream people who suffer in many areas that could so easily be sorted out, leaving them free to get on with their lives. I met a wonderful lady in Sydney, Australia, during a facilitator training class that I held the following year. Her case may raise awareness as to why so many women struggle to get pregnant or are judged for choosing not to have children. Charlotte was the first person to agree to come up and be regressed in front of the class. Her experience began as she saw herself standing on cobblestones, with many shops around her. She was a grubby girl of about 11 years old, wearing a dirty dress and apron. This was in England in 1845. I asked her to go to her home, but she couldn't. Her home was the streets. Charlotte could not sense any parents. She went back even further in time to when she was 5 years old, when an accident had claimed the lives of both her parents, leaving her an orphan. The orphanage was cold and lonely. She had a friend there, a younger girl of about 4 years old named Sally, whom she recognized as her best friend in her current life. The girls took care of each other. As the regression proceeded, Charlotte saw herself at 19 years old and stated that she was in love with a man whom she recognized as her ex-husband in her current life. Pregnant with his child, she was so happy and believed that he loved her very much. An incredible sadness soon washed over her, and she started crying, "He took my baby. He took my baby." She could only repeat those words over and over as she continued sobbing. The man whom she had loved was married and well-to-do, and his wife was barren. Because his wife could not have children, he set Charlotte up and then took her healthy baby. I directed her to go to the time that she next saw her son. She easily moved ahead, seeing him as a 20-year-old man, very handsome and impeccably dressed and coming out of what appeared to be a government building, with large pillars in front. Seeing him took her breath away. He was beautiful, and she was so proud. She then saw his father and, as he knew her, his mother walking behind him. Charlotte did not want to speak to him, she was so ashamed of her appearance, but she felt happy knowing that he had a life that she could never have given him. Moving forward to her last day, Charlotte saw herself as old in appearance but not in age. She died on the street, where she had lived. Her lesson from but not in age. She died on the street, where she had lived. Her lesson from that life was not to be so trusting of people. In her current lifetime, Charlotte does not have children. She also told me that later that same evening, she had called her best friend Sally from the orphanage who lived in the United Kingdom, to relay the story. To her absolute surprise, when she was describing the part of the life where her baby had been stolen, her friend said, "That's because his wife couldn't have children." "What made you say that?" Charlotte had asked her. "I don't know," the friend had replied. "And yet I just knew." Tony Riley, fear of losing a child again, in this or any other manner, can lead to the conscious or subconscious decision not to get pregnant. Was Charlotte repaying a karmic debt from an even earlier incarnation? We do not know, but her lover in that life and his wife, if she knew of his plan, will certainly owe her a debt in future lives. There is no escaping our debts and obligations. We must make it up to those people whom we have harmed in previous lifetimes. As we do, and as we practice kindness and compassion for all other beings, we progress rapidly on our spiritual path. Our vibration is elevated. There were many opportunities for love and empathy to be expressed in Charlotte's 19th century lifetime. Her lover in that life could have been much more generous and caring. The orphanage could have been more supportive, more nurturing, and not so cold and lonely. Society could have been more charitable, so that this trusting woman would not have to live and die on the streets. Only Sally seemed to be understanding and considerate. Our present world has not changed that much. Goodwill, altruism, and loving kindness must become more universal virtues and be extended to all people. When this happens, Charlotte and the rest of us will be able to safely trust humanity at a much deeper level. Charlotte and her lover were presented with several meetings to resolve their karma and to treat each other as spiritual beings should. Judy, the author of the next story, was likewise blessed with numerous occasions to develop a relationship with her soulmate. She met Patrick many times in her present life, and she will continue to meet soulmate. This is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.